Hello, I'm Louis Holmeyer with Advanced Technology Consulting, ATC, and we're here today with Tom Busby, VP of IT with Greif Incorporated. Thank you for joining us today, Tom. And I just want to mention before we move forward that this video and other videos can be found at comspark.tech. Again, thank you, Tom, for business today. My understanding is Greif has a global footprint, over 250 locations and over 40 countries represented. So it's a pleasure to be getting your thoughts today. Let's start off with, what's top of mind for most people today in IT, and everybody had to pivot and do different things when stay-at-home mandates came down from governors. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, how COVID altered your path and what maybe good came out of it for you.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. So from a COVID perspective, we were like a lot of companies, I think, in the first 3 or 4 weeks, once the stay-at-home orders were put in, where there's just a lot of uncertainty. It's like, how long is this going to last? Is this something that's going to be permanent? And I think as we came to the sort of realization that this was going to be the normal for quite a while. And again, I think even at this stage in the game, we're not sure how much longer it's going to last in this format. We decided to pivot quite a bit, actually. We'd made some headway with our cloud transition in prior years, moving forward with the Microsoft O365 platform, Microsoft Teams as a means to collaborate. And really what COVID did is it forced us to move faster. It just created a sense of urgency around the transition. Originally, we had planned on sort of segmenting this out over the course of a 6 to 12 month rollout period to get folks slowly acclimated to using Teams as an example. And, COVID just forced us to move much faster. And, within, say, 4 weeks after, the stay-at-home orders were put in place, we had fully deployed Teams across our entire global footprint. And it just kind of accelerated and created a sense of urgency around being decisive with action and not delaying things. Part of the challenge we had was, we wanted to sort of ease our users into it, but like I said, when COVID hit, we were forced to just pivot, almost on a dime and make it, get it out there much faster.
I hear that a lot, just acceleration. These were things that were, a lot of the things that people pivoted to from a technology standpoint were things that were on the roadmap. Yeah. But it is an acceleration type of thing. And you mentioned you're using Teams for communication and collaborations, like globally.
Yeah. We've got a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, so we're full stop with the Microsoft O365 platform. Made the decision to do that a couple of years ago, like I said. So we started with the email transition and moving that over to the cloud. And like I said, we were in the process of getting Teams deployed. We saw a lot of value with it from a instant messaging, video conference, phone call perspective. And, this just amplified it and caused us to make that transition in a much faster and shorter duration. And it was kind of an eye-opener for us, I would say, in terms of how quickly our users were able to adapt it. And, I think it sort of caused us to rethink how we do things going forward in terms of how much can we do remotely versus having to, all be in the same conference room for, say, a project or initiative that we're deploying. So we've really, as an organization, I think, made that shift to a remote work environment in our back office. Obviously, our manufacturing sites, have been running. Fortunately, we produce goods that are considered essential goods. So fortunately, our manufacturing locations have been able to operate and continue that forward. But a lot of our back office is now working remote where possible.
You mentioned Teams, and I think this maybe goes to a larger point, which is with a global footprint, I'm thinking, is standardization, right? And how, sometimes cookie cutter is good, and sometimes cookie cutter isn't so good. But I would think with a global footprint, maybe cookie cutter and standardization is good if you can come to standardization. How important is that with your IT initiatives when you have such a global footprint?
It's very important to us. I would say it's one of our driving forces is try to standardize as much as possible across our global footprint. And if we bucket it into different categories of systems, so you have I would say your productivity systems, which are your email collaboration tools such as Teams, your desktops, things of that nature that I would say we're fairly standardized across the globe on. And we're in the process of standardizing our business systems as well. So we've been on probably about a multi-year journey in terms of getting onto a single standard ERP platform. And that's continuing forward. And I think, certainly COVID and some of the challenges it has presented have sort of validated that that's the right path to go down, the right decision for us. But, you have your challenges. Some countries, due to localizations, due to just, legacy ways of operating are a little bit more challenging than others. But it's been a journey. It's not something that happens overnight, I would say. If any organization wants to take this approach to standardizing globally, I think it's just important for them to recognize that it's a journey. It's not something that you snap your fingers and it's done. It's going to take a while to get there, a lot of change management. But if the company's committed, you can definitely make some strides.
Great.
Yep.
You've kind of touched on some things that fall in this category, and it's kind of got some moxie, and it's kind of a hot word, digital transformation, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy with that? It sounds like you're being pretty aggressive. You don't have to get into the nuts and bolts, but maybe a little bit about your perspective, Greif's perspective on digital transformation.
Yeah, certainly top of mind for us from from executive level and board of directors level in terms of trying to determine how we can leverage technology to give ourselves a competitive advantage in our industry. And certainly, broad things like establishing tighter connectivity with our customers and suppliers to automate some of the transaction flow from a commercial perspective, as well as on a procurement perspective. And across the entire supply chain, I would say is something that we're focused on. In addition to that, obviously, being a manufacturing company, having connectivity at the plant level is critical as well, to make sure that we're collecting all of that data that we produce at the shop floor level and using that to drive decision making and drive analytics is also top of mind as well. So really, broadly speaking, that's kind of the direction we're going. And again, we're approaching it as a journey as well. It's not something that we're going to be able to pivot to overnight. It takes time to get there, and I think everyone within the organization is aware of that.
I think everything's a journey these days. We're never going to get to where we're going.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm being semi-facetious, but when we talk about digital transformation, a lot of times cloud falls under that.
Yep.
To what degree are you leveraging the cloud today? If you don't mind talking about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Well, from a application perspective, we do take a cloud first, approach. So if our core systems are on-prem, but if the need arises to meet a certain business need, and it warrants the procurement of additional software, we do look at the cloud first as the first option. That in addition to what we're doing with our O365 environment, we're also looking at some things with our compute and store, transitioning more of that to the cloud as well to take advantage of some economies of scale that we get from that, from moving things, up to the cloud from that perspective. So it's definitely part of our journey, part of our strategy is to leverage it as much as possible. Yep.
Great. I think another component, although it's not always bundled in there, but I think another component of digital transformation is, of course, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, how involved, how consumed are you with cybersecurity day to day, in your day-to-day operations and what you do? How much of that is how much mind share is put into cybersecurity now? And then if you would correlate that to where you were from a mind share perspective with cybersecurity, say 5 or 10 years ago.
I would say that it's at the forefront of pretty much anything we do from an IT perspective now. We always factor in the security element, whether it's purchasing new software, purchasing new hardware, infrastructure upgrades, application upgrades. It's at the forefront of what we do. And I would say from a pivot perspective or shift perspective, I would say that likely wasn't the case 5 to 10 years ago. It was more of an afterthought. But I think over the last, say, 3 years or so, it's really become a focal point for us as an IT organization. And it's been something that we spend quite a bit of time, sort of constantly assessing where we're at from a cyber maturity scale perspective. And, definitely want to ensure that we're making the right decisions and moving forward in the right way from that perspective.
Yeah, I know 5 to 10 years ago, there were a lot of organizations that didn't have anything in their budget that was line item cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And now it's a new cost, it's a new expense. But at the end of the day, I think everybody understands the gravity of the situation.
And I think, the challenge too is to look at it from the perspective of how it could benefit your organization, not from an IT perspective, but also just as an organization's perspective. Making sure that you're using that focus on cyber as a differentiator, and that you're doing the right things to protect your colleagues, as well as your partners, business partners that you're working with. So it's critical. It's a core competency of what we do, and it's something that from a focus perspective is just going to get amplified, I think, even more as we go forward.
Are there any unique challenges or accomplishments or things that you've encountered with Greif that you can share with us? Maybe how you were able to solve those problems, those dilemmas?
Yeah, I mean, without getting into too much detail, I think certainly the move towards a standard ERP was a big push for us, and some of the maturity work that we've done from a cyber perspective has been certainly something that we're proud of, and we'll continue that journey as we go forward. I think the biggest sort of piece of advice or thought process that I could share is that it really depends on having business sponsorship and business involvement. And, fortunately, our organization has been, committed to this process. I would say unwavering in terms of trying to get it in place. And, that's the biggest hurdle to cross. I think with any big IT initiative, ultimately it should be a large business initiative, and the business sponsorship needs to be there regardless of, if it's something that you may consider it, but it doesn't really involve the business. You may think of it more as a technical issue, but I think with anything that IT does, the business has to be involved and really sponsor it and champion it, because it helps push it forward. Yeah.
In your position, you've probably seen the global network transform so much with new technologies coming out, SD-WAN, whereas we all in the MPLS environment previously, and that's got to be an important, that cog in your wheel, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
that network and that network transformation and the global network, and all those locations are needing to access that business critical ERP application. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the plant connectivity for us is a big enabler for where we want to take the IT function going forward. So the technologies that you mentioned, as far as SD-WAN, we're obviously keeping our eyes on 5G and how that's going to evolve and affect and impact the connectivity space. One of the areas that we've really been focusing on is performance at our plant level, in terms of not only performance from a ERP perspective, but just general internet performance, because obviously a lot of our applications are in the cloud, and we want to make sure that connectivity capabilities at those locations is where it needs to be. So that's been a big push for us in terms of kind of combining local dedicated internet access with MPLS, with the 4G, as part of that whole SD-WAN bucket. One of the things that's come out of COVID that sort of has amplified that or or I would say made it business critical is the fact that we've been doing more remote, obviously doing a lot more virtual video conferences and video calls. We've also instituted some virtual tours of our shop floor remotely as well. So having, the capability to go out and do a sort of a virtual walkthrough on the shop floor sort of highlighted the need for that connectivity and speed. At the same time, making sure that it's secure and making sure that you're not opening up a hole potentially that could be exploited. So it's a balancing act, and it's a tough one, but it's certainly one that's definitely a key priority for us as an organization.
This conversation kind of begs the question, at least for me professionally, where do you stand, or where does IoT play in all this? Because when I think about manufacturing environments, I'm thinking there's a lot of connected devices in that, with sensors, right? At the end of the day, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly part of our overall go forward process is to look at what those capabilities are in terms of understanding what data elements we need to capture at the local level, how it interfaces with the PLCs and the shop floor equipment, and making sure that we have the underlying infrastructure in place to support the analysis that needs to happen, in terms of looking at all that data and making sure that we're leveraging it in the right way. Because as you said, that with the sensors that are out in the shop floor, that measure all types of attributes of machinery, there's just so much information that you can glean from that and use it for, predictive analytics, whether that's preventative maintenance activities, things of that nature. So that there's, especially as a manufacturing company, it's kind of, core to us to keep on track with those items and understand where it's going to go in the future.
Great. All right, how about a fun question?
Sure, I'll take
something. Maybe you can talk a little bit about something or initiative that your team, or an accomplishment that your team has completed recently. Maybe some accolades for the IT personnel at Greif, or maybe yourself.
Yeah, sure. I think obviously with as I said at the beginning of the interview, our push with COVID to enabling this remote work environment has been sort of at the forefront. So, our service desk leader, Michael Welsh, our infrastructure leader, Steve Hersker, and their teams have really done a fantastic job in making sure that our colleagues are able to work effectively. There was so much going on in the March timeframe as we sort of shifted. So much uncertainty, so much anxiety about, what the future held. And, I really commend those guys on my team for always keeping their eye on the prize and making sure that they focused in on supporting our colleagues out in the business and doing what they had to do to make sure that we could continue operating from a back office function. In addition to that, just a general kudos to our plant workers and everyone that worked out in our manufacturing facilities that, didn't have a day off, just had to keep plugging away and putting themselves at risk to get in, so a lot of dedication there that was quite humbling to witness. So just really proud to be part of the organization that has those types of folks in it.
You talk about the warehouse personnel that kept going on.
Yeah.
Have you ever put a number to how many people you helped transition from being office dedicated to work from home dedicated globally?
Yeah, I mean, it's our footprint in terms of back office folks was probably in about the 5,000 range in terms of just being able to transition them from the office work to having the capability to work from home. I think as time has gone on, some folks have, still come into the office occasionally, obviously making sure they're following all the protocols and whatnot. But yeah, it was a significant number. And, for us to make that shift, sort of unplanned, right? I mean, we weren't planning on doing this. I think about, seems so long ago, but January, February timeframe, I just can't imagine that we would be in a situation that we found ourselves in, and we switched it up pretty good and adapted pretty well to it.
It's very commendable. Well, I thank you for your time today. This is great stuff, and a future success as well.
Great. Thank you for having me, and appreciate the questions and the dialogue.